Welcome back to Textiles and Treasures. Today I'm going to share what I picked up at a trip to Goodwill as well as a trip to the Goodwill Outlet, also known as the bins. This is a really random thrift haul, so I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Sometimes when you go to the thrift store you find a lot of items and sometimes you find just a few. Sometimes that's just fine. The first two things I found at Goodwill were these glasses. As you can see here, this is a tall highball glass and it is the International Heartland pattern. In a couple of other videos I've showed other International Heartland items that I've picked up, such as a mug and sugar bowl and a recipe holder. I thought this glass was really cute and I liked that the design was very minimal. It's there, but it doesn't take over the entire glass. I really like the pastel houses as well as the little geese on the back. I paid $1 for this glass. I also found a highball version of this glass with the same design on the front as well as the geese on the back. I also paid $1 for this glass. In the vases section, I was excited to find this clear bud vase. You may recognize this pattern. It was made by Randall, as you can hopefully see here. And this pattern is familiar to me because the very first milk glass vase I bought was this particular design in the milk glass color. I was really excited to find it in clear. I've never seen it before and I haven't seen it since, and I really like clear vases for certain flowers. I paid $1 for this vase. I also picked up a vintage board game on this particular visit to Goodwill. This game is called Trust Me, and it is the game of hot tips and cold cash. This game was thankfully complete and it looks interesting. It seems like a simple, straightforward board game that has some fun to it because there is some elements of surprise. Whenever I see these vintage Parker Brothers games, I tend to pick them up. This one cost $1. A couple of days later, I headed to a different Goodwill, the one that has the Goodwill Outlet. Inside the retail store, I decided to pick up this bunny candle holder. As you can see here, this bunny candle holder is pretty adorable, very simple, and it is marked 1986 Japan. I had seen this bunny candle holder on a couple of different visits, but he was pretty grimy at the time, and I just really wasn't sure I was ever going to use him for his intended purpose of holding a candle, but when he went half price and he was only 50 cents, I decided to pick him up. Since I started shopping at the bins, I'm more sensitive to items that have lived a very long life. This is almost as old as I am, and I didn't want it to get broken or even tossed out after hitting the bins. At the Goodwill Outlet, I spent a total of $1.14 for the glassware and books and $4.38 on the miscellaneous items. Let's take a look at the glassware first. The first thing I spotted at the bins was this milk glass mug. I am always on the lookout for milk glass mugs, and I like the green and blue simple design of this particular mug. This particular mug was made by Glass Bake, and I actually found it sitting on the outside of the boxes of glassware, which means that somebody probably picked it up and decided not to get it and wanted to signal that it was worth picking up. I was definitely happy to pick this up for 20 cents a pound. Speaking of Randall bud vases, here is the milk glass version of the vase that I picked up in clear at the local Goodwill. Even though I have two other of these bud vases, this is my favorite design and pattern, and I decided to save it from the bins. Interestingly, this one still had a sticker on it from an antique store, and they had it listed for $6. Clearly it didn't sell because these are a dime a dozen at the Goodwill. I also found another vintage Gemco nut chopper. I picked up one of these at an estate sale, but when I saw this in the bins, I just couldn't resist getting another one. As you can see, this is marked Gemco on the bottom, and it was in excellent condition. Someone just clearly was cleaning out their kitchen and decided to get rid of it. I weighed the glassware with the books, and I'll show you the books at the end of the video to make sure I don't knock over any of the glassware. Now I'm going to share the miscellaneous items that I pulled out of the bins. Next to the glassware bins are the electronics, but they often hold a lot of random stuff as well. At the bottom of the bins, I found these vintage cookie cutters. I got a Santa, a clover or shamrock, a Scotty dog, a Christmas tree, and a moon. I found this really cute spinner. I just thought this was really adorable. Look at how tiny it is. This looks perfect with all of my tiny little succulents. I had just been thinking about these and how much I enjoyed having them in the garden as a kid. It was definitely worth rescuing this guy from the bins. Someone had clearly donated a whole stack of old VHS tapes. I actually found this Land Before Time VHS, but as you can see here, it is empty. There was no tape inside it. As a kid, I loved the Land Before Time, so I decided to pick up this case for the graphics on the cover. I'll probably cut them out at some point in the future. This definitely brings back memories. There were also a lot of albums in the bins this day. I decided to pick up this Disneyland Children's Favorites Volume 2 because of nostalgia as well. There are some traditional songs on this album, and it definitely brought back memories. Since I don't usually buy albums at the bins, I made a mistake with this album. I weighed it with the miscellaneous instead of with the books and glassware. Albums are also 20 cents a pound. It still didn't cost more than 50 cents. I also found this beautiful needlepoint in the bins. This was an interesting find. I actually found this piece inside its disassembled frame. It was still taped to the cardboard backing, and as you can see here, it had the matting that went with it. On another trip, I asked about a framed piece that had glass in it, and they told me that the framed pieces with glass are considered glass and they're 20 cents a pound. I didn't know that when I purchased this piece, so I decided to just take off the piece as well as the matting so that I got the information here that told me that it was Bermuda 1996, Kiskadee on hibiscus, if that's how you pronounce that bird. And of course, I cleaned up this piece. I gave it a nice bath and I took all of the tape off it, and I'm hoping to frame it in a hoop where I think it'll look a little bit nicer. Now that I know that framed pieces count as glass, I will not separate pieces from their glass again. I think this piece was really beautiful, and I'm glad I was able to find it in the bins. There were also a lot of random CDs in the bins. I decided to pick up this Reader's Digest Golden Memories of the 1940s. I decided to get this CD set despite the fact that it is a little bit heavy because I've been so into the 1930s and the 1940s with all of my vintage finds. So I decided it would be fun to listen to the music. This was in great condition. The CDs had no scratches to them. They may not have ever been played, so I decided to take this home as well. I also decided to pick up some Christmas ornaments in the bins. I picked up this sparkly green star. I thought it was really cute. I also found quite a few plastic canvas ornaments. I know these take work, and I always try to rescue vintage needlework. Here we have a snowman, a sled with a snowman, a stocking, a sled with a bear, and what looks to be a cat or maybe a dinosaur or a turtle. Not entirely sure. Obviously, those are very light, so they didn't cost very much either. I always find it fun to dig for books at the bins. I found this Choose Your Own Adventure book, The Underground Kingdom. I used to love Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid, so I decided to get this one in order to experience a little bit of my childhood again. Definitely a theme of this particular visit. I also picked up this Best of the Best from New England cookbook. As you may be able to see at the bottom, this has a misspelling of Massachusetts, so that's why I think it ended up at Sam's Club, but everything else is fine about this cookbook. Since I grew up in New England, I always find it interesting to look at these recipes. Sometimes there's regional recipes I did try, and sometimes there's things I've never heard of. There are definitely some interesting recipes in this cookbook. I also found the Amish Homestead Cookbook, and this just seemed interesting to me. The graphics in this book are pretty neat, and the recipes are simple but interesting. I think some of these desserts look especially good. I also found this Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Cookbook. Portsmouth is a city in New Hampshire right on the water. These cookbooks can be really fun because they give you a sense of what people are making at home. I also picked up the New Hampshire Gardener's Companion. I like finding books about regional gardening. When I started gardening, I lived in California, so things are a little different now that I'm back east. This book was in really good condition, so it was worth taking from the bins. I also found this book called The Vinegar Book. This book seemed pretty interesting. It's all about the medicinal uses of vinegar and how to use vinegar to improve your health. Last but not least, I spotted this book called The Doodle Revolution. This seemed interesting to me. It talks about how to use doodling in order to think differently, to organize ideas differently, and it definitely looks like a book that's worth paging through. I definitely want to learn more about doodling. So there you have my finds from a trip to my local Goodwill as well as a trip to the Goodwill Outlet. One thing I enjoy about the bins is the treasure hunt. You have no idea what you're going to find. Leave a comment and let me know which of these finds you like the best. For me, I think it's a tie between this milk glass mug and this cute little spinner. Thanks again for stopping by my channel. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. Have a good one. Goodbye.